One of the greatest misconceptions people have about manipulation is that narcissists primarily search for weak people. The truth is often the opposite. They are frequently drawn to individuals with strong character, deep compassion, unwavering loyalty, and sincere integrity because those qualities provide the greatest opportunities for control. They recognize that someone who values honesty will usually tell the truth, even when it is difficult. Someone who values forgiveness will often give another chance. Someone who believes in commitment will fight to preserve relationships long after others would have walked away. Someone who is deeply empathetic will naturally try to understand another person's pain before judging their behavior. These are beautiful qualities. They are the foundation of healthy relationships. Yet in the hands of a narcissist, these same strengths become tools that can be turned against the very person who possesses them. At first, this manipulation is almost invisible. The narcissist doesn't criticize your kindness immediately. Instead, they praise it. They admire how patient you are. They tell you they've never met someone as understanding as you. They make you feel special because of your generous heart. This creates an emotional connection that feels genuine, making you believe you finally met someone who appreciates the best parts of who you are. But over time, what began as admiration slowly transforms into expectation. The kindness they once celebrated becomes something they demand. The patience they admired becomes something they expect without limit. The forgiveness they praised becomes something they assume they deserve every single time they hurt you. This shift happens so gradually that you may not notice it. Every time they disappoint you, they remind you that you are such a forgiving person. Every time they break a promise, they ask for just one more chance because they know your compassionate heart wants to believe people can change. Every time they cross a boundary, they appeal to your understanding nature, convincing you that if anyone can understand them, it's you. Instead of respecting your values, they begin using those values as permission to continue their harmful behavior. Think about someone whose core value is loyalty. Loyalty is a beautiful characteristic because it creates trust, stability, and lasting relationships. Healthy people cherish loyal friends and partners because they know loyalty is earned through mutual respect. A narcissist, however, sees loyalty differently. To them, your loyalty is not something to honor, it is something to exploit. They begin testing how much you are willing to tolerate. They break your trust and then expect your loyalty to remain unchanged. They disappear emotionally and expect you to wait. They fail to support you but still demand your support whenever they need it. Before long, loyalty no longer means standing together through life's challenges. It becomes standing alone while carrying the weight of the entire relationship. The same pattern happens with empathy. Empathy allows you to connect with people, understand their struggles, and respond with compassion instead of judgment. In healthy relationships, empathy flows both ways. Both people care about each other's feelings, but narcissists often treat empathy like a resource they can endlessly withdraw from without ever making a deposit. Whenever you express hurt, they redirect the conversation toward their own struggles. Whenever you try to discuss their behavior, they explain how difficult their childhood was, how stressed they are, or how misunderstood they feel. Instead of taking responsibility, they invite you to feel sorry for them. Because your heart naturally responds to pain, you end up comforting the very person who caused your pain. Honesty can also become a target. If telling the truth is one of your deepest values, you assume others value honesty as much as you do. This assumption makes it difficult to imagine someone intentionally deceiving you. When a narcissist lies, your first instinct is often to search for another explanation. Perhaps they misunderstood, perhaps they forgot, perhaps there was a reasonable excuse. While you are looking for innocent explanations, they are learning that your honest nature makes you slow to suspect deception. They exploit your trust because they know you would rather believe the best than imagine someone intentionally manipulating you. Another powerful value narcissists often weaponize is forgiveness. Forgiveness is intended to release bitterness and create the possibility of healing. It is never meant to erase accountability or eliminate consequences. Yet a narcissist constantly blurs that distinction. After every betrayal comes an apology that sounds convincing enough to awaken your compassionate heart. They promise change. They express regret. They tell you they cannot lose someone as wonderful as you. Your forgiving nature wants to believe these words because forgiveness aligns with your values. Unfortunately, if forgiveness is repeatedly offered without genuine repentance or lasting change, it becomes a cycle that allows destructive behavior to continue unchecked. People with strong values often judge others by the standards they live by themselves. If you would never intentionally manipulate someone, it becomes difficult to believe someone would manipulate you. If you keep your promises, you naturally expect others to keep theirs. If you genuinely care about people's feelings, you assume others care about yours. This tendency is not foolish. It is simply evidence of a sincere heart. But narcissists recognize this pattern and use it to create confusion. They rely on your inability to imagine thinking the way they think. While you are searching for sincerity, they are calculating advantage. One of the saddest consequences of this manipulation is that victims often begin questioning the very qualities that once made them remarkable. They wonder if they are too kind, too generous, too trusting, or too forgiving. They start believing their greatest strengths are actually flaws. In reality, the problem was never their character. The problem was placing those beautiful qualities into the hands of someone who viewed love as something to exploit rather than something to protect. Kindness was never the mistake. Loyalty was never the mistake. Compassion was never the mistake. The mistake was believing that every heart values those gifts as deeply as yours does. Your core values remain among your greatest strengths, but they must be paired with wisdom, discernment, and healthy boundaries, so they can be appreciated by those who honor them rather than abused by those who seek to control them. Guilt is one of the most powerful emotional forces a narcissist can use because it reaches directly into the heart of someone who genuinely wants to do what is right. People with strong values often care deeply about being fair, compassionate, dependable, and loving. They don't want to hurt others. They don't want to disappoint people they care about. They want to be known as someone who keeps their word, helps those in need, and stands by the people they love. These are admirable qualities, but a narcissist quickly learns that they can transform those qualities into invisible chains. Instead of respecting your conscience, they manipulate it. Instead of appreciating your kindness, they convince you that you owe them more than any healthy relationship should ever require. The process rarely begins with obvious manipulation. It starts with small emotional pressures that seem harmless at first. You express a need, and instead of listening, they act wounded. You say you're tired, and they remind you of everything they've supposedly done for you. You ask for space, and they accuse you of abandoning them. You politely decline a request, and suddenly they become disappointed, distant, or emotionally devastated. None of these reactions are accidental. They are carefully designed to teach you that every time you choose yourself, you will pay an emotional price. Eventually, your brain begins associating healthy decisions with overwhelming guilt. Over time, you stop making choices based on what is wise or healthy. Instead, you make choices based on what will prevent conflict. You begin asking yourself questions that revolve around their emotions instead of your own well-being. Will this upset them? Will they think I don't care? Am I being selfish? These questions slowly replace healthier ones like, is this respectful? Is this good for me? Or is this relationship balanced? Without realizing it, guilt becomes the compass directing your decisions, and the narcissist becomes the one holding that compass. A narcissist understands that truly kind people often hold themselves to incredibly high moral standards. They know you want to be patient. They know you value forgiveness. They know you believe in helping others through difficult times. Instead of honoring those convictions, they twist them into obligations. They make you feel responsible for emotions that do not belong to you. If they are angry, they imply it's because you failed them. If they are unhappy, they suggest you caused it. If they experience consequences for their own behavior, they somehow convince you that you should have prevented those consequences. Slowly, you begin carrying emotional burdens that were never yours to carry. One of the most common tactics is making normal boundaries appear cruel. Imagine you tell someone that you cannot answer phone calls late every night because you need sleep or time with your family. In a healthy relationship, that boundary would be respected. A narcissist, however, may respond by saying that you obviously don't care about them anymore. They might tell you that everyone leaves them eventually. They may even remind you of how much they supposedly sacrificed for you in the past. Suddenly, your simple boundary becomes a test of your love. You no longer feel like someone protecting your health. You feel like someone who has failed another human being. This pattern becomes even more destructive because the narcissist often mixes truth with manipulation. They may genuinely have struggles. They may genuinely experience disappointment. They may even express real emotions at times. The problem is not that they have feelings. The problem is that they consistently use those feelings as leverage to control your behavior. Healthy people communicate emotions so relationships can grow stronger. Narcissists frequently communicate emotions so they can influence your decisions. The goal is not understanding. The goal is compliance. Another reason guilt is so effective is because compassionate people naturally assume responsibility before assigning blame. When conflict arises, they immediately ask themselves whether they contributed to the problem. Self-reflection is normally a sign of maturity. It helps healthy relationships grow because both people examine their own actions honestly. But in a narcissistic relationship, this healthy habit becomes a vulnerability. While you are busy examining your own mistakes, the narcissist avoids examining theirs. They encourage your self-doubt because every minute you spend questioning yourself is another minute you are not questioning their behavior. Eventually, you may begin apologizing for things that require no apology. You apologize for needing rest. You apologize for having different opinions. You apologize for spending time with friends or family. You apologize for saying no. You apologize for expressing pain after being mistreated. The word sorry becomes so automatic that you no longer notice how frequently you use it. Your conscience, which was meant to guide you toward integrity, has been reprogrammed to keep someone else comfortable, regardless of the cost to your own emotional health. Narcissists also understand the power of obligation. They remind you of favors they have done, gifts they have given, or moments when they supported you. In healthy relationships, acts of kindness are expressions of love, not bargaining chips. But narcissists often keep an invisible ledger. Every favor becomes a debt you must repay. Every gift becomes proof that you owe them unlimited access to your time, energy, and emotional resources. When you attempt to establish balance, they accuse you of being ungrateful. Gratitude is transformed into lifelong indebtedness. One of the most heartbreaking outcomes of this manipulation is that people begin distrusting their own conscience. They cannot tell the difference between genuine conviction and manufactured guilt. Real conviction leads to growth because it points out specific actions that need correction while preserving your sense of worth. Manufactured guilt is vague, constant, and impossible to satisfy. No matter how much you give, it is never enough. No matter how much you sacrifice, there is always another expectation waiting. You find yourself running on an emotional treadmill, exhausting yourself without ever reaching peace. This emotional confusion often spills into every area of life. You become hesitant to express opinions, reluctant to make independent decisions, and fearful of disappointing anyone. Even relationships with healthy people can become difficult because you have been conditioned to believe that saying no automatically makes you a bad person. You carry unnecessary guilt into friendships, family relationships, work environments, and even your relationship with yourself. The manipulation extends far beyond the narcissist because it changes how you see your own character. The tragedy is that many victims begin believing they have become selfish simply because they started protecting themselves. In reality, learning to say no is not selfish. Choosing peace over chaos is not selfish. Refusing to accept manipulation is not selfish. Setting limits on unhealthy behavior is not selfish. Genuine love does not require endless guilt, and authentic compassion never demands that one person's well-being be sacrificed to preserve another person's control. A healthy conscience encourages responsibility, honesty, and kindness, but it never asks you to abandon your dignity, silence your needs, or carry burdens that were never yours to bear. One of the most damaging ways a narcissist gains control is by redefining what is right and wrong until you begin questioning your own moral compass. This process is rarely loud or obvious. It does not begin with someone telling you that your values are incorrect. Instead, it begins with subtle suggestions, carefully chosen words, and repeated emotional pressure that slowly reshapes how you interpret your own beliefs. Over time, actions that once felt healthy begin to feel selfish, while behaviors that are clearly harmful become disguised as normal, necessary, or even loving. Without realizing it, you find yourself living according to a new set of rules that consistently benefit the narcissist while leaving you emotionally exhausted and spiritually confused. Most people enter relationships carrying deeply held convictions about honesty, respect, kindness, fairness, responsibility, and love. These principles serve as an internal guide, helping them make decisions with confidence and integrity. A narcissist recognizes that these convictions give you stability, so rather than attacking them directly, they begin twisting their meaning. They understand that if they can influence how you interpret your own values, they can influence nearly every decision you make. Instead of controlling you through force, they control you by convincing you that unhealthy choices are actually the morally correct ones. Consider the value of forgiveness. Forgiveness is meant to release bitterness and create room for healing, but it was never intended to eliminate accountability. A narcissist intentionally blurs this distinction. Every time they betray your trust, they insist that if you truly have a forgiving heart, you will immediately move on without asking difficult questions. If you bring up repeated patterns of dishonesty, they accuse you of holding grudges. If you ask for evidence of change, they suggest that your inability to forget the past proves you are the problem. Gradually, forgiveness is no longer about healing. It becomes a requirement for tolerating repeated mistreatment without objection. The same distortion happens with patience. Patience is a virtue that allows relationships to survive difficult seasons and gives people room to grow. In a healthy relationship, patience exists alongside mutual effort and genuine change. A narcissist removes that second part entirely. They tell you to be patient while they continue repeating the same destructive behaviors. Every broken promise is explained as something that simply needs more time. Every failure to change becomes another opportunity for you to prove your commitment. Instead of patience becoming a bridge toward growth, it becomes an endless waiting room where you are expected to remain hopeful while nothing truly improves. Respect is another value that is frequently redefined. Healthy respect is mutual. It recognizes the dignity of every individual and allows both people to express thoughts, concerns, and boundaries without fear. A narcissist often presents respect as one-sided obedience. They expect you to listen without questioning, agree without hesitation, and support their decisions regardless of the consequences. If you disagree respectfully, they call you disrespectful. If you ask for clarification, they accuse you of challenging their authority. If you defend yourself against unfair accusations, they claim you have become argumentative. Slowly, respect is redefined until it no longer means honoring one another. It simply means protecting the narcissist from accountability. This distortion becomes especially confusing because narcissists often speak the language of morality while violating its principles. They use words like loyalty, family, love, commitment, sacrifice, and honesty, but they redefine those words according to what benefits them. Loyalty becomes staying no matter how poorly you are treated. Love becomes agreeing with everything they say. Commitment becomes enduring unlimited emotional pain without complaint. Sacrifice becomes giving up your needs while they continue satisfying theirs. Because these words already carry positive meaning in your heart, you may not immediately recognize that their definitions have quietly changed. One of the most effective tools narcissists use is making self-protection appear selfish. The moment you begin establishing healthy boundaries, they respond with moral accusations rather than respectful conversation. They may tell you that kind people do not set limits. They may suggest that caring individuals always put others first. They may imply that protecting your emotional health means you have become cold, uncaring, or prideful. Since you genuinely want to be a loving person, these accusations strike at the center of your identity. Instead of evaluating whether your boundary is reasonable, you begin wondering whether you have become someone you never wanted to be. Another powerful tactic is attaching shame to healthy emotional responses. Feeling hurt after being lied to becomes evidence that you are too sensitive. Feeling disappointed after repeated broken promises becomes proof that your expectations are unrealistic. Feeling angry about mistreatment becomes a sign that you are unforgiving. Feeling exhausted from constant emotional pressure becomes an indication that you are weak or incapable of handling relationships. Every natural response to unhealthy behavior is reframed as a personal flaw. The result is that you stop trusting your emotions because you have been taught they are unreliable. This manipulation often creates a cycle of constant self-correction. You spend enormous amounts of energy trying to become more understanding, more patient, more forgiving, and more accommodating because you believe the relationship's problems originate within you. Meanwhile, the narcissist rarely engages in the same level of self-examination. Their moral standards remain flexible for themselves, but rigid for you. They expect grace without giving it, understanding without offering it, honesty while practicing deception, and loyalty while repeatedly violating your trust. The standards are never equal because equality would require accountability. Over time, this distorted moral framework begins affecting your confidence. Decisions that once felt simple become overwhelming because you no longer know whether your instincts can be trusted. You hesitate before expressing concerns because you fear being labeled judgmental. You delay setting boundaries because you worry they might be unkind. You silence your opinions because you have been conditioned to believe disagreement equals disrespect. The person you once were gradually disappears beneath layers of doubt, guilt, and confusion. What makes this especially tragic is that your original values were never the problem. The problem was allowing someone else to redefine those values according to their own desires. As this pattern continues, you may find yourself defending behaviors you would have once recognized as clearly unhealthy. You excuse repeated dishonesty because everyone makes mistakes. You minimize emotional abuse because relationships require sacrifice. You overlook manipulation because nobody is perfect. Little by little, your standards decline, not because your character has weakened, but because your understanding of what is acceptable has been intentionally altered. What once would have shocked you eventually becomes familiar, and what becomes familiar often begins to feel normal. The greatest danger in this kind of manipulation is not simply that it changes your behavior, it changes how you evaluate truth itself. Instead of asking whether something is genuinely right, healthy, or honorable, you begin asking whether it will keep the narcissist happy. Your moral compass, which was designed to guide you toward wisdom and integrity, is slowly redirected toward maintaining someone else's control. When that happens, you are no longer living according to your deepest convictions. You are living according to distorted definitions that were carefully designed to keep you questioning yourself while protecting the person who benefits most from your confusion. One of the most admirable qualities a person can possess is the ability to see the good in others. It reflects hope, compassion, patience, and a belief that people are capable of growth and change. This quality strengthens healthy relationships because it encourages grace instead of harsh judgment, understanding instead of quick condemnation, and encouragement instead of criticism. It allows marriages to survive difficult seasons, friendships to recover from misunderstandings, and families to heal after conflict. But while emotionally healthy people appreciate this hopeful outlook, narcissists often see it as an opportunity for manipulation. They recognize that if you are naturally inclined to believe the best about people, you are also more likely to overlook warning signs, dismiss red flags, and give repeated chances that they have not earned. A narcissist rarely reveals their true character in the beginning. Instead, they create an image that aligns perfectly with what you value. They present themselves as misunderstood, deeply caring, committed, or wounded by past experiences. They share stories that invite your compassion and encourage you to become emotionally invested in their well-being. Because your heart naturally responds to people who appear to be struggling, you want to support them. You believe that everyone deserves understanding and that no one should be judged solely by their past. These beliefs are rooted in kindness, but they also make it easier for a narcissist to build trust before their true patterns begin to emerge. As time passes, small inconsistencies begin to appear. Perhaps they break a promise, tell a lie, or react with unusual anger over minor disagreements. Your instincts quietly recognize that something feels wrong, but your hopeful nature immediately begins searching for explanations. You tell yourself they were under pressure, misunderstood your intentions, or simply had a bad day. You focus on the person they appeared to be in the beginning rather than the behavior they are displaying in the present. Instead of allowing repeated actions to shape your judgment, you continue holding on to the image they carefully created during the early stages of the relationship. This is where the narcissist gains tremendous influence. They understand that your hope works in their favor. Every time they disappoint you, they offer just enough kindness to keep that hope alive. They may apologize with convincing emotion, promise lasting change, or become unusually affectionate for a short period. These moments are often referred to as breadcrumbs, small acts of apparent sincerity that keep you emotionally invested without requiring genuine transformation. Because you sincerely want to believe that people can improve, these temporary changes feel like proof that your patience is finally paying off. Unfortunately, what appears to be progress is often nothing more than a carefully timed strategy to prevent you from walking away. Hope becomes even more powerful when it is connected to potential instead of reality. Rather than evaluating who the narcissist consistently is, you begin focusing on who they could become if only they addressed certain issues. You see glimpses of kindness, intelligence, generosity, or affection, and you convince yourself that these moments reveal their true self. You start believing the hurtful behavior is merely temporary, while the rare positive moments represent who they really are. In reality, healthy character is measured by consistent patterns, not occasional performances. A person is not defined by isolated acts of kindness if those acts are repeatedly overshadowed by manipulation, dishonesty, or emotional abuse. Another way narcissists exploit your desire to see the good in people is by constantly presenting themselves as victims of circumstances. They may describe difficult childhood experiences, painful betrayals, toxic former relationships, or unfair treatment by others. Some of these experiences may be entirely real. The problem is not that they have endured hardship. The problem is that these stories are repeatedly used to excuse present behavior rather than explain it. Compassionate people naturally understand that painful experiences affect emotional development. They become patient because they recognize that healing takes time. A narcissist counts on this response. They know that as long as you interpret every harmful action through the lens of their past wounds, you are less likely to hold them accountable for their present choices. This manipulation often creates an exhausting emotional cycle. They hurt you, explain why they acted that way, express regret, promise improvement, and then repeat the same behavior. Each explanation strengthens your hope that the next time will be different. You become emotionally invested not only in the relationship, but also in the dream of who they might eventually become. You begin waiting for a future version of them that exists mostly in your imagination rather than in their consistent actions. Months or even years can pass while you remain committed to potential instead of reality. One of the greatest challenges for compassionate people is distinguishing between empathy and denial. Empathy means understanding another person's struggles while still acknowledging the truth about their behavior. Denial means allowing compassion to replace discernment. A narcissist benefits greatly when these two become confused. They encourage you to believe that understanding their pain automatically requires accepting their mistreatment. In reality, you can feel compassion for someone's past while refusing to tolerate unhealthy behavior in the present. Those two truths can exist together without contradiction. Narcissists also exploit your reluctance to judge others. Many people have been taught that judging people is wrong, so they avoid making firm conclusions about anyone's character. While it is true that we should avoid unfair or arrogant judgment, wisdom requires evaluating repeated behavior. Healthy discernment is not the same as condemnation. It simply means recognizing consistent patterns and responding appropriately. A narcissist wants you to ignore patterns because patterns reveal truth more clearly than promises ever will. As long as you continue evaluating them by isolated moments instead of long-term behavior, they can maintain control over your perception. This tendency to believe the best often causes people to dismiss the concerns of trusted friends and family members. Loved ones may notice manipulation long before you do because they are observing the relationship without the emotional attachment that clouds your judgment. They point out inconsistencies, warn you about unhealthy dynamics, or encourage you to establish stronger boundaries. Instead of considering these warnings, you may defend the narcissist by explaining their difficult circumstances or emphasizing their positive qualities. You genuinely believe others simply do not understand them the way you do. Ironically, your desire to protect the narcissist often leads you to distance yourself from the very people who are trying to protect you. As this cycle continues, your identity becomes increasingly tied to the belief that your love, patience, or understanding will eventually inspire lasting change. You begin measuring your success by how much progress you think you can help them make. Every small improvement feels like confirmation that your sacrifices are worthwhile, while every setback convinces you that you simply need to love harder, forgive more, or remain patient a little longer. The burden of transformation gradually shifts from the narcissist's responsibility to your determination, leaving you carrying a weight that was never yours to bear, while remaining emotionally attached to a version of the relationship that exists more in hope than in consistent reality.